Hey everybody, welcome into the Beehive. I'm your host, the Beat LLC, and today we want to talk a little bit about the precious metal osmium, the eighth and final precious metal to be brought to the market. And we're going to discuss some of the common first newbie questions that seem to pop up and arise. Maybe some new questions that we've come across over our short time here with the metal. And I've got Space Miner with me. He is the Osmium Institute for New Mexico and Arizona.
Arizona.
And of course, you got me here in Colorado. And yeah, we're just going to talk about our experience so far and some of those new questions that have popped up since we've been here and in the industry. Want to welcome in Jake's Custom Parts, Neil's Han Dynasty, West Texas Stacker, Judea Barbara, 4902. Welcome in. Good to have you. And Stella Hernandez, Kevin Hawthorne. Welcome in,
Nice for you
everybody.
guys. Yeah, we got a bunch right off the bat. Nice.
Yeah, and you feel free, guys. Any questions you have, pop them in the comment section. We'd love to try to grab those if we can as well. If we don't get to it, just keep dropping your question in there. Unless it's I'm ignoring it, we will try to get to it. And yeah, with that,
We do want to respond, guys. We really do.
Yes.
We want to use this as an opportunity to respond, and there has been a lot of objections. But before I entered precious metals in general, there was a lot of objections to precious metals also. And there's been a lot of objections to cryptos and a lot of objections to stocks and bonds and option trading and yada yada yada. Well, every investment has challenges. Every investment is going to have specific strategies and specific exits and buy-ins, and so it's not to be unexpected that the eighth and final precious metal to enter into the trading market would come with a little bit of challenge also. But these are not unanswerable challenges. These challenges have answers, and they were questions we had, and as we learned the answers to these questions, it answered the questions we had enough to the point that we felt like osmium was a good investment. And so, as a quick reminder, B and I both, neither one of us were part of the institute. But before we were investing, buying crystallized osmium, talking about crystallized osmium, before we ever were affiliated with the Osmium Institute. And so these are we have gone through this process already. And so we'd like to offer the opportunity out to y'all to show you, like, hey, we do get it. We do understand. A lot of these are reasonable objections. Some of them are like, don't get me started, but a lot of these are reasonable objections. And I think if you heard the answer, you'd see that it's not such an unreasonable choice to proceed. So, sorry, we go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's it. Those are all good questions. Sorry, I'm trying this new setup here where I got two different layouts going, and I'm trying to make them all work here. So forgive me for the double video and all my editing problems here. But yeah, let me re-grab my comments. There they are, and drop them. So
Judy loves osmium. Thank you, Judy. Neil loves osmium. West Texas, I haven't heard him object to osmium. And I like his comment. My in-laws thought I was freaking crazy for buying silver and gold.
Yeah, I would like to touch on that just for a second because
that's the starting point.
Yeah, that's kind of what I have experienced since getting into gold and silver myself, the precious metals, and talking about it and getting responses from people. And I really think that a lot of people have it in their mind that we can't experience something like the Roman Empire went through, or all the different empires so far that we've had in the past basically have all experienced this. And they say that the people group that is last to realize they're in a hyperinflationary situation are the people of that country that is going through the hyperinflation, because you're so used to using the currency that you grew up with. I grew up and remember thinking, wow, this green piece of paper buys me the toys that I want, or what, the drinks that I want, the food that I want. So you just get it ingrained in your mind, like, oh, this is what you need. This is what the value is. This carries you through life. And that becomes your stronghold of, oh, I just get dollars and that'll carry me through. But, and if you never happen to look behind the curtain per se and see the fraud that's being manipulated with a money printer, as it were, you don't understand how your paper dollar could lose its value. But once you wrap your mind around it, then it becomes quite clear. And that's what I've found. When I talk to people, they're like, why would you get into gold and silver? It doesn't even make sense to them. But it's simply because they're not putting history with present and understanding how corruption works, and how, what's that saying, that power corrupts, but absolute power absolutely corrupts. And if you have access to the money printer, that's pretty powerful, or pretty absolutely powerful. So that's how the corruption enters in, and then they come out and say everything's fine, through their public broadcastings that they own. That's why they own them, so they can push the narrative that they want to push, which allows them to print more money without people realizing what's going on. But once you see that, yes, your fiat dollar is losing value, then you can understand any good solid commodity, or the most liquid through the past 3,000 years all around the world, is gold and silver. Then it becomes quite understandable why you would move into gold and silver, because you're just preserving your value, because it's real tangible value and can't be printed out of thin air. It takes a lot of energy. Space Miner talks a lot about this, about the energy unit of a man's output in life, or anyone's output in life. That energy that's put into it is the value for ourselves. So there is kind of this spiritual connection to it as well that I mention quite often. That this is kind of a spiritual battle that we're experiencing right now, and a lot of it is mentality. We've been told that it's just king dollar, right? Cash is king. So that's, I think, a mindset that we have to kind of overcome. But once you get past that and into your gold and silver, and then you start looking into some of these other metals, and some of them start to make sense to you as well. Enter in osmium.
Well, right. And that's kind of where I want to pick up, is like, you know what? I was into stocks and crypto before I came into precious metals. Like, I was thinking stocks and crypto, and fast money, slow money, fast money, slow money. And then I realized it wasn't freaking money. And like, and I've watched a couple of the big stock downfalls in our last decade. Been around for some of those. I was into crypto early. I was into Bitcoin. Dude, I was into Bitcoin before it was Bitcoin, and it was still Litecoin. And you printed it up on a piece of paper from some website. You see what I'm saying? And like, over the time, I've learned to recognize value. Okay. Now, whether or not it's sound money, or whether or not it's fast money, or this is a straight casino gamble. Okay. Value is value. And this is really what we're trying to pull out of this. So when I approached Osmium, well, when Osmium approached me, I heard it um, on B's channel here. He had on Ian, and Ian was talking about, he had this big disc of osmium, and he was talking about it. And look, I'm a geek, I'm a nerd, like an element collector, And when he started telling me about osmium, I hadn't gotten around to osmium, but when he started telling me about osmium and listing the material values, my mind started clicking and turning and whirring, and then he started talking about, the technical values of it and the logistical values of it. Dude, he wasn't even done with his speech, and I recognized the core principal values here. The same thing I recognized in gold, the same thing I recognized in silver, the same thing I recognized in platinum, same thing I recognized in rhodium. Osmium was easy. It checked every box plus some. It
Plus
created
some.
new boxes to check.
Yep.
And that was enough. Like, look, I didn't have to, like, I'm not telling you that this is how this is the best way for you to invest. But see, I knew enough about the material sciences and I knew enough about money by this point that I was able to go, oh my goodness, I don't have to know everything about this. I know enough to know a good deal when I see it and to capture that good deal. I have time to learn these things. I have time to figure more of this out, to answer some more of these questions. I have time to quell my own fears, my own anxieties. I have time to deal with this. But, you know, a dog knows you and he knows if you're good or bad. He ain't rallying with his buddies and discussing with you whether or not, like, hey, is this good? No, a dog knows what a dog knows, and you're not going to talk the dog out of what he knows because he knows something you don't, right? And it's wise of us to cue on to what the dog says. So when the dog in you says good bite, well, bite on, figure it out later. Like I didn't know everything about silver, gold before I dropped into it. I didn't go get a master's in it. I didn't I didn't write 3 books about it before I decided to invest in it. Same thing with my wife. She didn't have to prove she'd be a good wife. I had faith she'd be a good wife. I had I had faith in the qualities. I recognized the qualities and I said there's more here yet to be discovered. But the value is here. This is a good woman. She doesn't have to get to the end of, I don't wait till we get to the end of life and say, hey, wife, on the dying bed, hey, wife, it's been a good life. Would you like to marry me now that you proved yourself? That sounds ridiculous. But when we're talking about metals and investments, sometimes, dude, you don't always, like some deals, you don't always have time to like go study it out. You're going to miss your entry point. Sometimes you got to act on a little bit of faith, a little bit of instinct, and just recognize a couple core signals where you see it. Is it always going to be 100% a win? No. Sometimes you're going to fail. But through these learning keys, you start learning more. And I've taken enough fails to also know how to learn and capture wins. And when I saw osmium, I was just like, dude, that is a definite win on core principle alone. It's after it gained my interest, after it won me over, is when I started learning all these hyper parts and pieces of it. Started learning more qualities and characteristics, just like when you play any sport, you learn the basics, you get involved, and after you've been involved for a while, do you start learning how to pitch a curveball? You know? And so this is kind of where I'm at with this. Like, it meets all of the core principles of investment. It's got the rarity, the tangibility, the preservation. It does have the fungibility. It has the recognizability, the verifiability. It has the store of value. It has the exchange. It has the industrial uses. You know, it has everything in place. Everything every other metal does. The only difference is it's a little bit more rare. Enter the challenges. You know, but guess what? Gold's more rare than silver. So gold costs a little bit more. It's a little harder to find. a little bit harder to purchase, a little bit harder to sell sometimes.
Yeah, and if you don't, you mind if I jump in there for a
Yeah,
second?
yeah, I've been ranting for a while. I think it's a good
No,
point.
yeah, I just wanted to bring out on that point that you were talking on gold being a little more rare and therefore a little bit more expensive. Now, and that is true overall right now. However, we've also discussed really what makes these metals valuable is their unique characteristics, the intrinsic values within each metal that is unique. It's only this metal has those good characteristics or traits. And so, you know, ultimately that's what makes the metals valuable. And when you look back even at history, our history is labeled with metals. We had the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, the that's because these metals allowed us and allowed societies to move themselves forward in great leaps and bounds just because a new metal was found. So it's the metals themselves that are valuable because of their characteristics. And the precious metals are called precious metals because of those precious characteristics. And so, yeah, it's like Spaceman was saying. You learn about gold and silver, and you check all those certain boxes that you're looking for, and then this new metal comes along, and it adds a couple more boxes along with the ones you've already been checking. So, for those that are looking at it that way, that's why we get into it. And a lot of the objections that I've heard so far to getting into it is actually where the the opportunity lies. Like,
Yeah, the
oh, there's
irony of it. It is the great irony of it, isn't it?
yeah, it's funny because that's what a lot of people's objections are toward is the very reason I get so excited about it. It's a new metal and there's no market yet. Perfect. That's right
Yeah.
when I want to get in.
Yeah, let's capture that. Let's talk about that point for just a second, because
Sure.
that is like an objection that's frequently raised for some reason. Like, well, I haven't heard about it yet. How come I haven't heard about it? I go around, nobody knows about it. Where am I going to sell it? Nobody knows about it. I don't want to get stuck with a metal, that I can't sell. And it's like, guys, this has only been available since 2014 in the world. It's only been in America for a few years. Like, it's reasonable that you would not have heard about this. It's reasonable that you wouldn't know everything about it. It's reasonable that it's not sitting in every shelf, you know.
Yep.
But this market is growing. We do see it. There are people that attest, people that have bought osmium from us, that have gone out to other place to a store and seen it on their shelf, and that person's surprised that they've seen it. Oh, you know about osmium too? Well, guys, that's the sign of the beginning of a metal entering a market. That is what you would expect to see. If it is entering the market, that is what you'd expect to see, random occurrence. And we're seeing it. So it's a sign that it's early, and it's a sign that it's moving, you know?
Yes, and so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of jump in with one of the big ones that I've come across a lot. In fact, when I was at the when we were at the New Orleans Investment Conference, I even had a chance to speak with Lobo Tigre, also known as Darth Silver, and I joked around with him about the silver and how well it's doing, and we were excited, and I said, well, so from an expert like your standpoint, what do you see here? And from an objective problem, or what might you see? And he said, well, the problem that he saw in it, or what might change his mind, is that it's not used on a large industrial scale. Where's the industry that's large and it's taking over? And And that is I was actually kind of surprised to hear that from him. Now, obviously, that's one of the first things that will probably pop into some of these large investors' heads. But I've heard that objection a lot. But again, that kind of falls into the it's brand new category. And if it's a new metal, if it had the same characteristics exactly as silver or the same characteristics as gold, I might see where they're coming from. But this metal has unique characteristics that no other metal has that I've come across. And so that's what that's defined our history so far, as I was saying earlier. Just because we haven't found a large industry that's sucked it all up yet doesn't mean that that's not coming, especially when it's a brand new metal. And when people don't know about it, when it is a new metal and the industries haven't got a hold of it yet, that is that same window that I'm talking about, where the that's where the value lies. That's where you have a big option to get in while no one knows about it, and gain that value when they do find out about it. We've talked with another metal that we've talked a lot with Ian Everard out of Wyoming, arc silver gold osmium, is rhenium. And, he was talking rhenium back not at this year's investment conference, but at the previous. And, since then, the U.S. government, let alone other industry, has come out and put out a large order for rhenium, more than we have in stockpile, more that's mined in a year. It just, that type of an order can't be filled easily. And Ian is already sitting on a pretty good quantity because he's ran the numbers. There's not very much of this metal out there, and it's not very well known yet. And it has these unique characteristics that are going to be desired.
Yeah.
And now, just a year into it, you've got this large contact from the U.S. government looking to get into it.
Yeah.
So,
And surprise, guys, that had nothing to do with you. It had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with B. It had nothing to do with institutional investment. It had to do with like sheer industrial demand. Like, we got a use, boop, we need it. End of story. What's it cost? And this is
yeah,
how a lot of these metals work. They're ultra rare, like ultra low natural occurrences. Okay, crustal occurrences. We're only getting so much of some of these metals. Like, look, it's like osmium, rhenium, gold, silver. Guys, we don't care what the hell the name of it is. We don't care what the hell the name of it is. Does it meet XYZ qualifications of a proper investment? Does it have?
rare earths. Yep.
Yeah, well, and just to answer the osmium demand issue for the sake of conversation, is osmium already has a high demand and a high usage and industrial usage. It's mostly in alloys, and in the medical field. So, like, if you guys like America being top dog, woohoo, you know, we got badass battleships. Well, we need osmium bearings. We need osmium high end electrical tips. We need osmium for detection equipments. We need osmium for a bunch of stuff. We need tantalum. We need rhenium for these things. Okay. Um, as osmium goes, unless you guys don't care about like cancer treatment and diagnoses, well, guess what they use in there's a couple cancers that osmium is like the go-to technology. Use osmium to detect these cancers. And without osmium, we wouldn't be able to treat those cancers. Like, it's already has its presence. It's had its presence for 100 years of developing technologies, and we're still developing more and finding more. And again, like B's pointing out here, like, there is we let's look at gold. Okay, I've made this point a bajillion times, but fluctuating percentage wise, about 70% of the world's gold is tied up in jewelry, and it's not here in America, you know. And So turns out jewelry is a real economy. Well, guess what? Osmium's got a real economy of jewelry behind it. We've already got the high-end watchmakers, the high-end jewelry makers. You know, that's an economy, you know. But going back to like rhenium, it's got rare natural occurrence. It's terribly difficult to produce. We need it like crazy. They don't care what the cost is. You don't have to convince everybody in the world. It doesn't matter if you're stacking it or I'm stacking it. You're in or out. Do you have some or not? Were you there whenever they bought up the whole buttload and left the world with a tiny little bit to scrap and fight over? Well,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is where money is made. This this is where guys make those big monies. This is where it happens. They buy in early. They get a lot for cheap because there's not much available. And they know that and they see that and they wait for everybody to do their thing. And then right up here, guess what? They're 10, 100,000x, you know, because that's how like long term strategies work and
yeah,
speculative strategies work.
yeah, and so beings will go back to Ian and rhenium. He was already in the market when the United States government put out this large contract for more than his mined yearly. And it's funny, they put it out and asked if they could get it filled, and they couldn't get it filled. And so it's they're still trying to get that filled. But the funny part is within the contract note, they said, and try to do this without raising the price of it. Well, yeah, wouldn't that be a nice if it worked that way? But you can't take out large sums of rare metals that only exist in that form in small packages, and it's hard to extract and hard to get. And that's why you need to be in it beforehand, because after that large contract gets filled, there's going to be other industry that's looking to fill that. It's going to be hard to suddenly get your foot in the door. But if you're there beforehand, you got nothing but upside.
Well, and another thing, since we're kind of talking about the ability to fulfill, anyways, these mines, when we're talking about these ultra rare metals, they're ultra rare because they're usually a companion metal of some other metal being mined. Most of these metals, like rhenium, osmium, there's not a rhenium mine, there's not an osmium mine, there's not a tantalum mine per se, like there's not a hafnium mine. These are metals that live in other metals. So if you're not mining that metal, if there's a drop in zirconium, you're not getting hafnium. If there's a drop in mining in platinum, you're not getting any of your platinum group metals out of that. You're not going to get your palladium, you're not going to get your iridium, you're not going to get your ruthenium, you're not going to get your rhodium, you know? And you're not getting these if there's any kind of a drop in the platinum. And so these are hard to recover, hard to sustain. Like as an example, it was yttrium, or stand by somebody. It was thulium. Thulium has no shelf life in industry. As an example, there's no shelf life. As soon as it hits, it's already consumed. It's pre-consumed. Okay. So like to get some is usually like secondhand. I don't even know how they get their hands on it, honestly, but it's because there is no shelf life. It's a hard to reproduce. It's hard to fuel an economy, that's sucking these ultra rare metals up. And so you start dealing with, when we're looking at some of these more minority metals, these more exotic metals to traditional investing, this is where your high profitability zone comes in. These are the metals that it doesn't take you and your neighbor all rallying to support gold, but which, by the way, when you're rallying to support gold, you make no difference or a minute difference at best. We're not a, a chunk of the spot price of these metals. These spot prices, the institutional investor, the guy buying 1 ounce rounds of something, he means little to nothing in the scheme of things. The only time you're going to see prices fluctuate is in the premiums because of you. You're the only effect you make is at the bullion when they jack up the premiums because you all come crawling because silver just got bought up by major industry. Sorry, you want to
No,
respond to that, B?
well, sure, yeah, no, that's all
It
true.
was a mouthful, right? But it's
You know, I
competitive
want
was the summary there. Yes,
yeah,
it'll go up more. Yes, we're only getting started, buddy. So
and so going back to to maybe not having the known industry consumption, that that's the point of that same opportunity is getting in when it's a new metal like we're talking this is new to the market, and so getting in before that hits. But Darth's point was, well, of course I believe what his point was that would be taking a risk because we don't know that industry will be found. Now, I'm quite positive in my mind that it's going to be found. How long will I need to wait? It's already quite valuable and went up in value just from what's already there. But again, that's the same two sides of the same coin, kind of that. That's where your opportunity lies. But also, no one that I know in my community pushes osmium as the first thing you should purchase in the metals world. I have always said before I've ever sold any, and I've sold a few pieces, that before you get into it, you should have your base metals. Now, you don't have to. If you only want to get osmium, that's fine too. But I at least advise, or not advise because there's no financial advice, but I think that you should have your base metals, your most liquid metals, the worldwide known by everyone and understood.
communication metal, man, communication metal.
Right. So that you can, if you need liquidity quickly for some reason, you have your base metals already stacked so that you're secure in that way. That allows you to, get into the osmium and have that time scale where you don't need to sell it right away to get liquidity. You can hold until that industry, until that market gets built out and all that value gets added in, because that's kind of where the opportunity is, right? You've heard in commodity investing, you want to buy the thing that nobody wants, that has unique characteristics that are going to be needed at some point. You need to move in when no one wants it. Like West Texas was saying earlier, his parents thought he was crazy for getting into. So that's when you want to get in. When people just don't understand if you see something of value that it has unique characteristics that you think's going to be needed, but no one's in it right now, well, that's your chance. That's what commodity investing is about.
Right. And look, these challenges I've said this 1,000 times and I'll say it again. These challenges that are brought to these alternative investment metals, this is what I aim at, alternative investment metals, is um, we've seen these arguments with other metals play out. We've seen the challenges, which are common, just a repeat challenge, like with platinum as an example. Platinum, it wasn't that long ago that we finally brought platinum back to the table for open for trade. We finally brought it back to the table, but there was a lot of challenges to that in the early days. People were going, "This is extraordinarily difficult to mine. It's so energy consumptive and to refine. And then once we've got it refined, what are we even going to use it for? You know?" And this is what they literally said about platinum, rhodium, palladium, ruthenium, right off the bat, right? They're like, what are we going to use this for? It's so difficult and expensive and energy consumption, and we don't have a plan for it. And now modern world doesn't work without platinum. You like your modern life, you better love platinum, you know. But this just goes to reflect about what B has been repeating tonight. There technology changes, technology demand changes. So like, like what if we don't have a use for it right now, right? And let's just pretend we didn't have any uses. We do. But let's pretend we didn't, but we do. Okay? Is even if you offered that challenge and I said, fine, you got it, but technologies will come. Oh, but there's only such a small amount of it. We could never use this in a large, broad application. Well, guess what, guys? We're doing vapor deposition now, sputtering, the same way they make microchips, the same way I color my coins. We can we can we can pound an ounce of silver into a football field. You know, we have the technology to make resources go further, and the technologies will get better. And when it does, and we have that technology ready for it, and they say, yes, this is the perfect metal for it. And it just so happens that we've got enough of this here that we could run this technology for years. And guys start going out and competing in technology. And it starts getting competitively consumed again. But it's worth a lot more because now.
Or the U.S. government puts out a large contract and sucks it all up immediately.
Well, and that's active now.
Right.
the U.S. government matches somewhere between 5 and 10% based on the metal that we consume. Like everything we domestically consume, our military matches somewhere between 5 and 10% as strategic reserve. And when you get medicals go critical, one of my buddies just sent me a list of critical metals for 2025. Dude, that's a big list this year. It's a big list this year. It's not a little list. It's not a few. It's not 10 metals up there anymore. It was like 30 something metal. We only
And
have 80, I want to say like 85, 86 metals, available in the transitionary chart side of the
yeah,
periodic table. And when most of these have become critical and our government's matching, well, that's kind of like your 401, right? Somebody's like inputting on top of whatever you input. So every time you consume, they consume. Well, that's a stimulation to the market, I'd say, because theirs is like it's comparable to like crypto, where they do a token burn. When that goes into our military reserve, buddy, that's the last time you're going to see that 500 ounces of silver every time they test shot.
and silver now is on that list, and it's funny because I used to get that as a naysay to being in silver. It's not even on the critical mineral. They took it off the critical minerals list. It's like, actually, it's funny not to get sidetracked onto silver, but when we used to actually,
Akka! Holy shit. Sorry. Akka popped in. What up, Akka? Oh my god. Dude, it's so good to see you. Sorry. I
it's all
didn't mean
right.
to do that.
So yeah, with silver, we used to track it, and they used to document when it was on the critical mineral, and they documented how much was going into military use, and then suddenly they took it off that, took it off the critical minerals list, and a lot of us would have said there's definitely manipulation going on there, and why wouldn't you let us know what's going in and blah blah blah. Well, now you can see what's happening there, and so
Well, think about it from the military or the government's perspective. Like, dude, this is actually like just like look, if we like everybody's like audit Knox, audit Knox. If they did a real audit of Knox and found that gold wasn't there, you want to talk about a national security issue? Like for real, they're not going to tell us even if there is a problem because they would call it a national
national
security issue.
security.
People would freak. They'd
Yeah.
pull every dollar. There'd be a bank run. There'd be a silver run. There'd be a commodities run. Everybody running for their nearest commodity, whatever it is they want to consume, because this is your last fucking chance. Because it would be the biggest bailout we've ever seen of the U.S. dollar. What? No gold? Well, that means no money. I don't care what your fucking zeros and ones say. No gold, no money, no silver, no money, no metal, no money. And money, I mean, money's got to meet a few terms. But when we're looking at commodities investments and the power of commodities, you know, when we were talking about like, can we do it without money, right? We we quickly discovered that we would have a fluctuation in commodity, okay? That you wouldn't be necessarily hammered into gold. Gold won't necessarily exchange through everything. You got to translate it sometimes into a silver, into a copper, into a whatever the use is that's coming in. And so when we're thinking about this in a modern nationalistic form, you know, we've got, you know, an abundance of what? Debt, paper, zeros and ones. Where's our abundance? And when and that's the fraud you speak of that we live under constantly. They money printed away all the values. But guess what? This is real life, and real values exist in real energy units. And and you can stock up food on the shelf until it starts rotting, right? And spoiling, and your water cultures, you know, and help me out here, B.
No, yeah, I mean
A
that's
moot point here.
right. No, yeah, no, it's reality is I believe reality is going to come back into play, and we've been kind of living in this false reality of ones and zeros and fiat money, and oh we'll just, you know, ever since the closing of the gold window and the president's statement of oh we'll be a forward looking trading partner, don't worry, we'll keep honest books. Well, we've kind of blown all that out the window, and now we're just kind of free floating in no man's land, and reality has to come back into play. And you know, that's why we're seeing tariffs, that's why we're seeing the BRICS, that's why all of these things are related. And that's why suddenly, oh, you hear talking these wars about rare earth metals, and oh, well, we'll get some. All of a sudden, rare earth metals popped up in the Ukraine Russia war. Whoa, what is that? We hadn't heard about that. Well, suddenly, you know, and now suddenly we've got trade embargo, and all, it's like that's because reality is coming back into play,
And it's about commodities,
and
real commodities.
right, real energy, real things, real commodities. And like we say, if you look back at our history, it's labeled off of Iron Age, Bronze Age. These metals allow energy to work properly, or societies to move up because of these things. And so just like space miners thought, we actually use osmium in quite a bit of different medical, which you know I'm learning about, let alone your other industries where you're looking to, you know, just from its other characteristics being the most dense, the hardest, most abrasion resistant, the most reflective, all these
Yeah,
different
neutron absorbing, gamma ray absorbing, you know, like not every
qua-
not every metal
quantum
gamma ray absorbing, you know.
quantum computing. They're looking into that heavily right now, how osmium could take the whole quantum computing thing to a whole different level with. And we need, again, those unique characteristics that lie within this metal. And what's
Doves,
funny
go ahead. Sorry.
about you know, like a lot of people, whether you buy into this story or not, hear me out. You got these exploding stars, and that's where they say our gold and silver comes from, these unique metals that come from an exploding star and have these unique characteristics. It's been our money for thousands of years. Well, we just found the most rare naturally occurring element known to man, happens to also be the most dense material and the hardest material and the most abrasion resistant material and the most beautiful of the precious metals. And you're going to say, well, I can't think of if that would be valuable or not in the future. And being we're at the beginning of this
Yeah, like you
industry,
had me at precious metal, you know.
right? Like
It's a
there's
precious metal. Oh. Like, shouldn't that be enough? Like, can we start there? No, I wanted to really spec in right here with what Dove was saying. People want an easy way and they don't want to do their homework living in a fantasy
there
world.
you
And that's
go, you
real.
nailed it. That
And we have a responsibility to our family, to our neighborhoods, to provide for ourselves, not be a burden, contribute to society. These are like the expectations, go out, be fruitful and multiply, and you're supposed to do this. And damn it, I was
that goes well. That
research point. You have a responsibility to know what you're buying. You you need to know what you're buying, or you could get ripped off or make an irresponsible purchase or be unprepared for the world that comes with it. You need to be take that time. It's a precious metal. You should be holding on to it for a minute anyways. Use that time to study and search out your exit. So that way when you do want to sell it, you already know where it's going to go.
and you
You
have to and you have to understand, being a brand new product to the market, it's going to take time for the market to be developed for that. Again, that's also your opportunity, though, that you are at the beginning of it and you have a chance to get into it before that market develops. So, this is, and that's one thing, the Osmium Institute that verifies the product and registers it with customs and goes before it goes from country to country and they enter it into their database. That's one kind of thing. They basically just tell you the characteristics and you do what you want with it. If you want it, great. If not, fine. But one thing they do mention is this should be looked at as a long-term investment project. And obviously so, if it's a brand new product, because it's going to need time for people to hear about it and people to talk about it like we're doing right now. But again, that's also the opportunity that within it. So
Yeah, I mean, take all the time you want, of course. Like nobody's trying to rush you into it. It's just I recognized right away the value, the value type, the type of value that I was looking at. And I recognized that, okay, this is one of those values. It's a limited occurrence product, you know, there's only going to be so much at the end of the day. Your capacity to get a hold of it, rarity occurrences, its sustainability, its durability, it's how pretty does it look? How easily could it be used? You know, like these are these were all easy to recognize values that I'm okay with taking time with also. Like I recognize these issues. It's a wonderful investment, but it's not a wonderful investment if you're trying to make sure that you can huck it out of here today, wait for it to spike up tomorrow and pawn it off tomorrow. I mean, if you're a really good salesman, maybe, but no, like you're gonna have to wait for somebody that also recognizes and sees that value, But it's the same with gold and silver. We don't reckon not all gold coins are equal, but it's the same gold underneath that we're mushing around, you
indeed.
know.
Yeah, and since I first invested in it, a little over a year ago now, it's already went up a fair amount. So I'm already happy with it. It's already performing. But
Mhm.
I am moving in for the long term. I'm not excited to turn around and move it. Now I move it, I get my own and I also sell, but that's a little bit different from the scope that we're discussing here. But yeah, like I said, I get it as my corner stall horse that I have my gold and my silver, which happen to be doing quite well right now as well. But I got my side horse over here that I think might really run fast because it's such a small market and it's got so many great characteristics and it's so unknown right now. It has so much possible opportunity there. And so that's, I'm looking at it for large moves, the long investment, the many years down the road, then look back at it and see, where am I at, and am I ready to move it or not? So
Yeah. I got a little stack of gold backs that I've been sitting on for a long time. I got them early. I recognized the value of a gold back. I went, look, not everybody's going to get it. Lots of arguments against it, but lots of arguments for it. As long as there's arguments for it, does it meet this qualifications? Check, 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 check. Yeah, I'd say it's safe to grab a short stack. And I did. I grabbed a short stack of gold back, and now I hang up to a little stack of gold backs. And guess what? No regrets. you know, I've been, I bought into silver. I remember it wasn't that long ago, guys. We have. I love telling this story now. Hey, I love repeating this. We were all there for it, guys. Most of y'all here in this room were there for that. When silver was sitting at $15 and people were thinking it was crazy to talk 20. They didn't think we could sustain a 17, and then it was 20.
Never 40.
Oh, it'll never make it to
Never.
30. No, at 40, dude, the whole bottom would fall out. The whole bottom would fall out at 40.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
The
we watched
world would
it at
disintegrate.
40, and they're like, yeah, big crash, big crash. And it goes bleh, for 2 days, and then it goes, and rockets off again. Like that was their big crash. I saw it pasted across YouTube.
Right.
Crash incoming, question marks, exclamations, rocket ships, like the whole works. And it was ridiculous. I'm like, oh my goodness. And so you saw like this much, it just goes bit, and everybody's like, it was like a straight drop because everybody's panicking. And then it picks right back up and trucks along. And that's what we've seen for almost a year now, you
Yep.
know, almost a year now, just straight trucking, and it ain't stopping. Why would it? It can't.
Right. So I'll go ahead and jump into one of these other complaints, and this was a large complaint that came from a large channel, and it was called a scam. There's also been some other words used. Do you remember what another word that was used recently? Space Miner.
Oh,
What was that?
dang it. I just had it. I was just. It,
Anyway, the scam part of it is pretty ridiculous for me and Space Miner because we've been in it for as long as we've been in it. I would understand when you first look at it. I can see where you might come up with this idea, but it's very far from being a
gimmick.
scam
Gimmick. It was the word
or a
gimmick.
gimmick. Yeah, this is something a scientist spent 40 years of his life crystallizing different metals and trying different methods and crystallized osmium is the only thing that worked for him and to get to the desired level that he was after. And since he's refined it down more and worked with watchmakers to get it to the preciseness that they needed. So this is a long, like 40 years of his life, long-term
It was
project.
Rolex, the watchmaker.
Just for one, yeah, there's several
Yeah.
big names. And but then you have the founder of the Osmium Institute, which is different than the actual production of the metal. But the Osmium Institute was founded by Ingo, and he had 5 successful businesses running at the time, and he sold all those just to start the Osmium Institute because he's seen obviously the possibilities that lie ahead for osmium. And so, they built a whole facility. They're the top testing place for osmium. That's what they check the osmium, they test it, they photograph it with high definition um not cameras but
It's laser.
microscopes.
They literally laser scan it to produce high definition. Well, they do high definition photography, digital
Yes,
photography, but they additionally do a laser scan on it. It's like
my
down to like nano.
microscopy or whatever you call it. Yeah, they go in depth on it. Then they have worked with the different countries and customs. And so customs knows what this product is before they receive it. They understand it. The OICs, the identification codes that are actually built into the piece itself, its unique fingerprint is also identified with an OIC on the box. So customs knows what they're getting when it comes into the country. There's no confusion. So all of these different large that they built the Osmium Institute, a large foundation in Germany, completely built out now. Beautiful building, vaults, beautiful products, jewelry now housed there. And, that's all before, well, the building actually got finished while I was, getting into it myself. But most of all of that had taken place before I'd ever even heard of it. So, like, this those types of things are not what you do when you're going to scam people.
Yeah,
and
that's not
and
a gimmick. It's not a
and
gimmick approach. It's
they've actually sent this off to different universities to study it, and not only, and they've sent it off to different labs to have it tested. Some labs couldn't test it, they didn't have the machinery to do so. Those that did, a few separate labs came out with it at 100% pure osmium, and the universities that have studied it decided not only should it be somewhere in an investment class, they said it actually has created its own investment class, its own category.
it did.
So it is not a scam. You don't go through all of those different things for a scam. Have it studied by universities.
Yeah, you don't put it out to the whole world. Well, in fact, the Japanese government, before it could come in to Japan, the government got involved, and they were, to make sure that their nation wasn't getting scammed. You know, and and these companies demanded that and required a whole bunch of independent testing be done. That a whole bunch of independent testing be done on this, just to make sure that they were in fact getting a sincere and legitimate product before they'd even let it into the country. You see, and that's what stimulated a lot of these university research projects on osmium. In fact, like that one he was deferring to, I believe, was like a Spanish institute for money, you know, and and these guys, that's the one he's referred to, where they took a look at it, and not only is this a valid investment, but it turned out it created a whole new investment category, that they offered, that it should be a new one. It's technically a new one. And it's because it meets qualifications that were previous. It meets such high standards on so many levels. Listen, one of the biggest challenges to this is, like, this would never serve as a money medal. It never will serve as a money medal. Like, in the sense that, like, it's not going to be in everybody's pockets. Your pieces would be too tiny. You know, like, not everybody's going to be able to get their hands on this. Real quick, I got to answer Brian about, he was asking how much it is, and it's not a real,
75,640, and right on the screen there, this is the actual chart that
but
you can.
this is crystallized osmium.
Yeah.
Okay, like, there are other forms of osmium to be bought, but these are not the same type of product. That's like, you can buy
Yeah, so you
oxide silver too, but you don't go out looking for oxide silver because it's cheaper.
right. So you've
Oxide,
got two different boxes there on that chart. The top one, as I scroll along here, is the crystallized osmium, and the bottom one is a purified, high-tech ready osmium that they use in, like, possibly quantum computing. There's many different things that it already is used for, that a lot of people don't realize. There is a lot of industry demand already.
yeah, a lot of government demands. In
But
fact, go ahead.
no, you're good. So right here is where I entered in at the 1600 mark, and it actually started back here about, again, this is a new product, and it's been over in the UK area for about 12 years now or so, 12, 13, and it's only been in the States here for a couple. But it started off in 2017 at 565, and I got in 2024 at 1650, and then since then it's up to 2423. So That's the pricing right there. And so that times, so this is by gram, it's sold by the gram. So 2,423 times 31.1, or it comes up to about 75,000 plus per ounce. But again, it's sold by the gram, not actually by the ounce because it's so valuable.
Well, yeah, and it also has to, it takes a lot of work to create, to put osmium into like a safe and tangible form, like tangible, handleable form. Because outside, that's part of why, like, look, to also answer you, it's not a rare earth, it's a precious metal, and it's one of the 8 precious metals in the category of precious metals. And we couldn't, like, we, you could invest in it, but what you would have received is glass jars, and you would have been lucky to have been able to even buy it. Most guys wouldn't sell it to you because of the insurance liabilities that come with it, like unless you're like an institution or a lab. And that's what a lot of this work was involving, was like getting this into a tangible form. And one of the tangible forms that have been developed for this was like sintering or arc beads. And but it's just a, it ends up being a chunk of metal that nobody can fucking work with because it's the most compression resistant element in the world. Like it breaks machines. To try to press osmium literally breaks. In fact, there was a company, I won't say who, but there was a company recently just broke one of their sintering pressing machines, um, trying osmium, and it's going to cost them probably $1 million to fix that error. And it's no joke. It's that compression resistant. And so when you put it into a crystalline form, it gains an additional value, the value of being able to use it, like, and use it directly without having to manipulate it further. You see, that does create a value. The ability to use something, like, look, they don't just hand you a roll of paper and tell you to make your paper freaking straw. They don't hand you paper and tell you to fold it up to make your tray at the fast food place. You see what I mean?
Yep. Indeed. So yeah, industry scam unknown. Yeah, that's the other one. Well, it's unknown. We've covered that one pretty much. Yeah, yes, it's unknown, but again, that's where the opportunity lies. It's a brand new metal, and so
What
that's
up, John?
getting in before people know about it is your opportunity base. And then we have a small market, and that's another thing that people kind of confuse. Like, well, not everyone's going to get in. Not no, definitely not everyone's going to get into it, and you only need a very small percentage of people to get into it. Along with the already existing industry. And this is not something that's on the stock market and fluctuated by paper puts and calls. And it's
Private.
yeah, and it's sold by, I mean, it's supply demand. It's selling at the price that it's at, therefore it goes up a little bit because there's only a little bit, and as it keeps being bought, as it's going up, that supply and demand keeps, it's just a natural rise.
Yeah.
So it can't be manipulated easily like these other markets, that like we're just seeing in silver, how the market supposedly from a cooling problem, the COMEX had to shut down. Yeah, right. I mean,
Hmm.
it's so
Nope, they didn't
luckily,
want to let it go.
yeah, luckily we won't have to deal with that with the osmium. So
No, and it's not, and it's not regulated in the sense of that it's not publicly traded, which means it's not regulated. It is private monopoly. Everywhere you go with osmium, it becomes private monopoly, every company. There's only a few places producing, refining out the osmium. If there's not even a great enough concentration in the platinum, they won't even try. Like your platinum bars have osmium in them, likely. It's very likely they'll have osmium in them, and iridium, and palladium, and
right,
ruthenium.
very minute amounts.
Yeah.
Yes.
So unless there's a great enough concentration, they literally don't even try to pull it out. So, which makes it even more difficult because nobody's aiming at it per se. Like I said, unless it's enough to make it worth their while, they'd rather walk by it just to save a buck, you know?
Yep. So yeah, so that's actually what I was showing here. Oh, let me move
What
my.
is it? Can you hold this stuff physically and how liquid is it? Yeah, you could,
Yes.
dude, it's completely like hypoallergenic. There's
Yeah.
no allergen known. It's been medically tested and proven. Um,
Yeah. This is what it is here. So set in the inner part of this flower here is osmium nectar. It's crystalline osmium, and I've set that as well. Nathan's holding the piece up. There's also this shooting star up here is crystalline osmium. And so yeah, you can wear it. And actually that's double sided, and my wife wore both these around on her neck. And it's actually the most, that's another thing that it's another one of those, the most being the most dense, the most rare element known to man. It's also the most inert once it's in this crystalline form. So you could eat the stuff and be fine. In its raw sponge form, mixing with oxygen can create fumes that are harmful and toxic, but that's only in its raw form mixing with oxygen. Once it's in its crystalline form, it becomes the most inert of anything. So
yeah, and
and
again,
you can't dissolve this stuff in acids. Like you can drop you could drop Space Miner's round here that's a silver round with some inset osmium, and you could drop this silver round into what's that acid called?
which one do you want to drop it into? Nitric, sulfuric, aqua regia?
Aqua
Do
Regia is
you
what
want
I
to
was
drop
thinking
it
of,
into
but yeah,
boron?
whichever one of those acids that you can dissolve, you can turn this metal into a
Oh,
liquid.
nitric you'd use for silver.
Nitric you'd use for silver. That little piece of osmium up there that's used for the lens on that spacesuit, that piece of osmium would not be dissolved by the acid. It would just be sitting at the bottom of the solution just fine.
Yeah,
So
or yeah.
it's very inert and it can't be broke down by acids. It's some more of those unique characteristics that it holds.
Yeah, yeah, and as far as like liquidity, listen, we're still in the early stages of transaction with this. Like, there's only been so many people that have bought. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a pretty healthy amount, but there's we're still learning. You know, there's still a trade aspect to this. But I can tell you this: usually, whenever I put it up for sale, usually somebody's buying it. In fact, at the last trade show I went to, the New Orleans Investment Conference, um, there was one guy who must have ran to the table, I don't know, a couple times looking for me to buy one of my rounds with osmium in it. Another guy had grabbed like he asked a couple questions about one and then ended up buying seven. And then you
Eh,
know the guy, one of our booth neighbors, I'll just say one of the neighbors, fellow booth people, whenever I initially presented it to him, literally laughed and then responded. They literally laughed at the idea of osmium. And then after a few days of watching us go, well, I can tell you by the end of the conference, we were sending an OCC his way. So
Meaning he bought some. So yeah.
yeah, he bought some.
Um,
So
Thank you for the subscription. Greatly appreciated. Welcome into the Beehive. Big Gun Returns. Appreciate that.
and
And go
sorry
ahead.
to no, I
No.
really want to say it. Uh, Brian, it's not a metal for everybody. Let me be really clear about that. It's not a metal for everybody, and I wouldn't even call it like a beginner's metal. You
Right.
know,
No.
like if you're at like a beginning level investment, like I get it. You got a sense of the value. Yeah, maybe grab a little bit to start
Yeah, a
with.
little won't
Well,
hurt. No.
yeah, no, but we like to usually suggest that if you don't have your gold and your silver in line, like a reasonable investment in those, like a safeguard and an understanding of like the markets and the trades, like it's probably not something you want to go fully into.
Right.
You know,
A
just
little.
there is some right now. There is a little bit of liquidity in the sense that you you know most people are like, well, I haven't heard of it, so I guess it's not worth anything. Which is crazy because well, yeah, you haven't heard of it because it's new.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't seen a real market for it. Well, don't you think that's crazy that you say no because there isn't a market? Well, don't you think there'd be a market if you said yes? You know, like if that's your only reason to, like, yeah, there's people got to buy it for there to be a market. But if you like it, you got to act with a little bit of faith. Like, look, man, nobody guarantees you when you buy that 1 ounce of gold that gold's not going to drop $100 tomorrow.
Yeah, Brian, I just want to chime in your last comment there. I think that's a great, great idea, great thought process. That's what I recommend to people. Get your silver base, get some gold, maybe a bit of platinum. And once you understand why you're getting into silver and gold and that it's your fiat dollar that's losing its value, then once you have your bases in those other liquid metals that everyone understands, then you can look into some of these more, as some would like to say, exotic metals, rare metals, unique metals,
Alternative investment metals.
alternative investments, maybe a bit more speculative but with much more upside possibility. But yeah, you definitely want to start with your basics. And silver is my favorite metal, although I do love osmium, but silver is where I started and a great place to start. And
And
so
yeah, but man, once you get past that, like if you're feeling cozy enough to jump into platinum, man, um, platinum is a great investment. And beyond that, that's where you start really hitting on your osmiums, your rheniums, your rhodiums. You start hitting on indiums and hafniums and a lot of these are like 1500 yttrium went up 1500% the other day. That's a rare earth metal. Yttrium.
woo,
Yttrium. And
never heard of it. Must
well,
not be valuable. I've never heard of it.
it's worthless. 1500%.
Wow.
Like that's nutso in a day. Like overnight, like bloop, it's worth 1500%. Scandium. We made uh we just had like a declared like a scandium emergency in US the other day. Like, okay, this is not just critical, it's like a hypercritical. We'll take any scandium we can find right now. They kind of put out the all call for scandium. Like, we'll take any scandium we can find right now. Like, we'll take any of it. We'll just take it, give it to us. We can't get any. It's got no shelf life, like no industrial shelf life. It's not like anybody's sitting there with scandium for us to go down and buy this. You can't even pre-order scandium right now. It's kind of crazy unless you can outbid a guy 10 years ahead of you, you know.
Yep.
But that's
Yep.
just one metal. I don't go getting into scandium, dude. Not yet. But I'm in it. I'm in it.
Yeah, I
So
greatly appreciate that, Brian. Thank you so much for subscribing. I really do appreciate that.
no, you
And,
guys are
and
great. I appreciate all y'all hanging out and entertaining us. Thank you.
yes, for sure. We're ourselves wanting to help people preserve their value, and just like you said up in your comment above, Brian, why you're buying silver is a bank account. And that's right on the money. And it's sad that we have to be out here doing this and telling people, but we're actually really want to help people in that way. So that's actually what we're doing out here. So Silver and Cigars, welcome in. Good to see you, my friend.
Um,
So yeah, actually, I know we wanted to keep this kind of short. We're a little over an hour and we've covered some of our main points. Is there some that you would like to throw in on top of that, or?
Woo! Get me started. No, let's see. Just to kind of like summarize real quick. Challenges to osmium, duh. That's my feeling on the matter. When somebody's like, there could be a challenge to this. Like, yeah, I get it.
Sure.
But all the arguments, literally all the arguments I've ever heard for against osmium, I've I I'm telling you, we've been through these arguments a million times, and I argue this over and over again. We heard it with platinum. We heard it with rhodium. We heard it with palladium. We heard it with all of these, and now they're some of the most important metals in our life today. We nobody was talking about rare earths, and now our nation's putting out like a critical, wanted on the materials. We're putting up emergency mining projects in Nebraska. The Elkhorn, I think it's called. We're putting up, you know, all of this to say, like, guys, USD don't mean nothing anymore. It almost doesn't matter what metal you get into, as long as you've got like a strategy that that you can accommodate in your lifestyle. But among those, I'm going to say, get your gold and your silver right, but have an alternative to that, man. If you're a prairie dog, you better dig more than two holes, you know. And yeah, diversity. I love diversity. Thousand ounces before you stack anything else. I don't know. Maybe for
Right.
me, I'd work 100 at a time.
Yeah.
But
And it's your
thousands
own
a great
call.
multiplier. Thousands a great multiplier.
Right.
It's a
Yeah.
strategy for you. And and this is why I argue for alternative investment metals and diversity, and like have silver and gold and platinum, and then have some osmium for that racehorse in the back, and then have some rhenium to make sure you don't miss the wave on that and you're involved in that sector. You know, like
Yep. And
stock
what
up
you
rhenium while it's cheap, while you can still get it by the kilo. Wouldn't you have loved to have bought gold when you could buy it at a kilo? Well, buy indium too. You can buy a kilo right now.
right, and it's what you understand. Like I like what Silver and Cigar says here. Free copper from work to cash to silver. That's my ratio. I used to work heavily in construction area as well, and there's lots of copper left over on the job site that often they're just wanting to throw away or get rid of. And if you're willing to take it, they're happy to give it to you. And that's a great way to do exactly what he's saying. And so much of it comes down to understanding. And so, like, if you feel comfortable and you're sure on silver, like Brian is, like I am, that's where I started. Then stay there until you feel solid in it, and then start looking at some other metals to diversify a little bit and ride some of those other opportunities up, because it won't all be so. Although silver is my favorite, some of these others are going to perform quite well as well, including, I
Silver
don't
is your
know.
foundation. It's your foundation that you build your house on, man. You build it with that, and then you decorate your house with everything else. You know. Sorry,
Right.
go
And no, yeah, that's fine. And this metal right here is what am I holding here? Space miner.
gallium.
Gallium. And this is a very cool metal. Now, this is all the gallium I'd have. I'd like to get a little bit more. But what is cool about this, you can pour this stuff out in your hand, and it's like in your hand, it's almost like a liquid. When it's cool at about room temperature, it becomes a solid. But you put it in your hand and it melts and it looks just like mercury almost. And it's chemically really cool, because if you put just a little bit on a tin can, it'll eat right through the tin can. You'll just drop some on a can, it'll just eat right through it. So very interesting, some of the characteristics of these other metals that we just don't know much about. I bought this at a LCS, a local coin store, and the people at the counter had no idea what it was when I was trying to buy it, and we had to get the owner down there to figure out what I was buying. And so it's just cool to find some of these other metals, learn about the characteristics of them. Again, we've named our history after finding new metals and understanding new metals, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age.
Yeah, great
Just
point.
some of these characteristics within the metals themselves are what makes them valuable, what makes them unique, what makes industry need them. And that's where I love talking with Space Miner here, because he's got such a mind for these metals that is impressive. And again, it's coming back to reality. Like you said, any of these commodities that are real, are tangible. We're leaving this false reality and coming back into reality, which will be real things, real values, real energies. And so some of these unique characteristics are going to really shine. And like Ian, that got into rhenium and was talking rhenium for a year or two, and then suddenly our own government, the U.S. government, puts out a large contract that eats up the whole market. And they included in their note, try not to let it spike the price up. It's like, yeah, right. That's you can't do that. But anyway,
So arrogant.
it's like, oh, we missed this product. Can we just buy some and it doesn't affect the price? Like, it's so funny.
You kidding me? Yeah, we live in a crazy world, man.
It is.
Can you keep the price down? Oh my goodness.
All right, guys. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. I hate cutting out of here. We got such a great chat going on here, but I know we
Are
wanted to keep this somewhat succinct so people could get through it for those that come in afterwards. So, but great questions, guys. Really appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much for the subscriptions. Really appreciate that, and all the great subscribers I have and the people that spend time with us to learn on these things is really appreciative, and thank you.
Yeah, and Dove, are there any metals you'd say they're spending or not worth spending money on? I think what we have to do is like soon do a live about and just kind of like randomly go through metals and discuss natural characteristics of the market in those metals. I think that could be a really fun one, actually.
Yep.
Like, because like, is there any I wouldn't like? That's
not
so
with the dollar going down like it is.
Yeah, because there's a good strategy in almost any metal. Like somebody out there is making money on some metal.
Now, I would like to say about copper, because there's been some channels come out hating on investing in copper, and I do kind of agree. Like the you can go buy copper rounds and they're selling like 1 ounce copper rounds at like $2, and you can buy pounds for like $5. But there are certain dealers who are working around this. Like I have Ian of Arch Silver Gold Osmium on out of Jackson Hole, Wyoming. He has a brick and mortar store, and he's actually got a connection to 4 nines fine copper, and he's selling 2 ounces for $1. So that he's basically flipping that on its head. And that does get copper in a range that's almost worth investing in physically. That's like $7 a pound, and it's on the market for $5 a pound. So yes, there's a bit of premium there, but you got to understand, everything's going to have a little bit of premium when you get into it. But that brings it much more in line with making an investable physical. Now it takes a lot of it to be a lot of value, but depending where you're at on the scale, and eventually copper will probably be the change for silver, right? Just like it was for thousands of years. So
I favor value densities.
right.
That's what I kind of favor. So when it starts moving away from value density, then I like how much value. The smaller the greater the value per the smaller the mass usually seems to be attractive to me. So when it starts leaning away from that, like even copper, I love copper. I think it's way more beautiful than gold, way more useful than gold. I think copper's great, but I don't invest in copper just because I don't want to have to buy barrels,
large amounts. Yep.
And some guys are doing it, and when it happens, because they're right, eventually they'll be right, and when it happens, they're going to win. So
just like Nicholas says, he's up.
Be careful of the form. What do I not trust in? A form that can't be used. A form that can't be used, like might be my deterrent. Some form that cannot be used.
Yep. And so here's a little pamphlet that we just picked up from this comes directly from the Osmium Institute, and that's one of their highlights right here. It is the highest value density of all precious metals. So Space Miner was talking about value density. Well, not only is this the rarest element known to man that's not radioactive, it is also the densest element known to man. It's the most abrasion resistant element known to man. It's the most value dense element known to man. of the metals, I should say. So like I could keep going. Actually, there's a lot of the most with this metal, and it is the most value dense of the precious metals. So on that point that Space Miner was making. And the other cool thing that we need to mention before we get out of here, this was mostly about objections to the metal, but osmium does have its own unique built-in fingerprint to each piece that's put out. It's just like a snowflake when it crystallizes. This is the crystalline osmium. So as it grows, as the crystals grow, it grows into its own unique shape. None grow the exact same. So it has its own built-in fingerprint that can't be forged or replicated. It can't be forged because it's the most dense. Nothing can be put into it that's gonna match its density, so you can't forge this metal. It's got its own built-in code that can't be forged. So lots more amazing stuff to be said about it, but we just kind of wanted to touch on some of the first things that we hear, first objections that are easily worked through once you that actually most all of the objections are at the exact same time the value possibility that lies within it. So the opportunity, I guess, is what I was
And
looking
we
for.
welcome objections. Please note any objections in the
Yep.
comments.
Yep.
And we welcome them, and I'd love to respond to them. Oh man, like nobody ever asked me the questions, like because I got answers, and I'm always telling people like, yeah, I can answer that. Hey, I can answer that. Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah. Hey, I
Yep.
can answer that. Like
Yep. Put
that's
any
fun.
any put any questions you have down below, any comments you have down below. Love hearing them. Love answering them. Like he says, we want to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, and it's
Your
important that you guys feel comfortable with your investments out there too. So if there's anything like it doesn't have to be osmium related. Like if you guys got serious questions and you want some serious responses, we love responding. It really
Yep.
helps us too. So thank you.
Yep. Yep.
You know.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you guys. Appreciate your comments there. And I think we're going to wrap this one up. And we want to keep this one somewhat dense for those that come after the live so that they can stomach this whole chat that we had. So, but greatly appreciate you guys for the great questions and sticking with us here. And we'll be back soon with more. So stay tuned. Thank you much. Catch you soon.